Quick congrats to Phil for his MBE.
OBE, yeah, I'm coming
OBE.
to that. OBE.
Promoting to me.
So I think we're live now, are we?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm that we are live.
Okay, well, I'm Councillor Leslie Barham. I'm the Chair of the Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority. I'm welcoming everybody today to this meeting of the full authority. Just to say a few opening remarks, and that is our Chief Fire Officer, Phil, was awarded and made an Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in the C19 Birthday Honours List, and we congratulate him. It's because of the work that he personally has done in the as Gold Commander during the C19 period, but also because of the inspirational work he's done with us, and also it's an award which would be, you could reasonably say, shared with the Merseyside staff and authority. So, Phil, congratulations and very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also going to wish Councillor Bruce Berry, who was a member of the authority, every success. He's no longer a member of the authority. He's been revolved. And we know that members who've been on the fire authority generally go away with a very good impression and are ambassadors for the authority when they leave. But more particularly, I would like to welcome Councillor Brame from the Wirral, who joins us as a member of the fire authority. I hope, and I'm pretty sure that you will enjoy your experience. We're all there to help and support you as well. We are very focused on supporting our officers in the very important task that they have to keep this county the safest part of the country from a fire point of view. Just also to mention that on the agenda, the papers are numbered. The numbering might not be exactly in sync. So if you excuse me for just referring to page numbers, you might just have to jiggle around. So I've given my general introduction. This is how the meeting will work. During the meeting, all microphones and cameras will be turned off by the facilitator, with the exception of myself and whoever is making a presentation. Should anybody leave the meeting will continue, hoping that we remain quorate. Privacy and confidentiality. If you could please ensure that any items relating to personal or confidential information, there are no items, as we've indicated, that are exempt up front on the agenda here, but please ensure that any papers you have are not available to be seen. Recording, I'm advising that this meeting and its proceedings will be recorded and broadcast on YouTube live for members of the public to see now or afterwards. Questions or comments, if you wish to question or speak at any point, please turn on your camera or raise your hand. That's the best thing to do, use the hand raise function. Then we will unmute and ask a question. I'm also, please don't try and unmute yourselves. We will sort that out for you. When it comes to approving or voting, we don't have a lot of votes. I'm going to make a presumption that items, when we move to the resolution, noting or agree or accept, that is agreed. If anybody has a reservation or particularly would like to vote against or whatever, please again raise hand function, let us know. The default position, if that's acceptable, will be that the item is agreed. So we're going to ask now, Gemma, are you going to read out the roll, or is it Ria? Are we going to read the roll of who's in the meeting, or do we take those as read?
I confirm, Chair, that there was no apologies for the meeting, and I can go through all the councillors if you'd like now who are in attendance.
I mean, if I just read it through,
Yes, sir.
Byram, Kenny, Roberts, Tweed, Spurrell, Knight, Rennie, Thompson, O'Keefe, Finneran, Grace, Brame, Barrington, Coleman, Makinson, Preston, Stapleton, Maloney, all of whom are councillors, and Anthony Boyle, who is our independent member. Is there anybody who is, silly question really, anybody who is not here, or are all of those I have mentioned present in the meeting?
Councillor Tweed, Councillor O'Keefe and Anthony Boyle are not present.
Okay, thank you. So now we can move to the agenda. I'm going to move to, we've had preliminary matters. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting are circulated and offered for agreement. I'm going to make the running presumption that those are agreed unless I hear from any other member. I'll call those agreed.
Councillor Leslie Rennie has raised her hand, Chair.
All right.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. It's only when you call for declarations of interest.
And you have a declaration?
Yes, I think I do, Chair. In item 6, the item in respect of the donation of the 2 appliances to 2 very excellent charities. I think perhaps like yourself, I've had the opportunity to visit the St John's Rescue Corps in Malta and see the fantastic work that they're doing with our previous appliances, but I'm also a trustee of Operation Sabre. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also declaring interest on those 2 same items. I've already sent a copy to the solicitor. It's, you know, the St John thing, and also on 8, which is about reservists. I'm on the board of the reserve forces. It's not a pecuniary interest. These are charities. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for that. We've got the minutes. We're going to come to 3,
Chair,
which is...
Can I just confirm there are no matters of urgency? And I know you've already confirmed there's no matters that exclude the press.
Yeah, well, there are no matters to change the agenda, and there's nothing at this point in time to exclude press or public. So now we're going to go on to item 3, which would have been pages 19 to 22, whatever they actually are. Change of membership of the authority. So Ria, if you could outline this to us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that to the changes of the legislation as a result of the current pandemic, which saw changes to how committees meetings are actually held, and also in regard to AGMs. Local authorities could choose to delay their AGMs this year or continue as their current status until the next AGM. While the authority held its AGM in June, Knowsley Council was the only council that held their AGM in May as usual. At the end of September of this year, both Wirral Council and St Helens Council held their AGMs. While there was no change to membership to the authority from St Helens Council, there was a change resulted from Wirral Council's AGM, as you've already mentioned, Chair, that saw Councillor Berry would no longer be appointed to the authority and is replaced by Councillor Alan Bray, who's now been appointed. This does affect the political balance, but this is raised within agenda item 4, so members are asked to note this change to the membership.
Thank you. Yes, it's we have no control over this, quite rightly. This is part of our establishment under the Act. And as I said, we welcome our new council member, and we wish every success to those members, or that member who has left us. Colleagues, this is an item to agree and to note. Are there any other views on that? If not, can I accept that as agreed? Thank you. Item 4 follows the same format. It's regarding the change in political balance, but there are consequences here. So for Ria.
Thank you, Chair. So within this paper, it obviously references that there's been a change to the membership, and that has impacted on the political balance. There's obviously a legal requirement for the authority to reflect the correct political balance. And further to that, those details are contained within paragraphs 9 to 11 of that report. What's provided in Appendix A is a draft proposed template to contain reflect the political balance for members to consider. And then members are asked to note the change in political balance of the authority as a result of the Wirral Council's AGM, to determine the number of seats on each committee to be allocated to each political group in accordance with the political balance and the legislative regulations, and confirm the members who are to be appointed to which committees in accordance with the wishes of the relevant political group, which is what is attached to Appendix A for consideration. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And to that extent, I have circulated a private note to the group leaders to ask them if they are content with that. I seem to have a response to say that they are, and so again the working presumption is that those solutions that are outlined in that appendix would be agreed, unless there are any views or comments on that. I'm not seeing anything, so again I'll put that as the working proposition, that the items I outlined in 4 and the appendix there be noted and agreed, and will be brought into effect immediately and into the new membership of committees. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we move to 5, would be pages 29 to 32, amendments to the Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority's constitution. There are some running issues which are of a finessing nature in the printed agenda. We also have, in terms of issue development, produced a few other tidying up suggestions drawn from the practice in other districts. You know, you'll be used to these in your own authorities. I think we might have that there is an addendum that would be added to what's already in the printed papers. And is that addendum able to be shown on the screen? Ta-da! So what we've got is about if there are exemptions, vexatious and discriminatory, exempt under the Local Government Act, and then some, you know, just procedural issues about 7 days, proper persons, signatories, 6 months, all those sorts of issues which are set out there for members. And the way that we would deal with that, you know, 5 minutes questions, further period for, you know, presentation. Anybody that's affected by it would also have a right of attendance and so forth. These are broadly drawn from the other principal authorities' working practices. And I will move from the chair both the items listed in the agenda item and also the list of addendum items that was just shown there and which have been circulated to the solicitor in advance of this meeting. This is purely a tidying up exercise. Are there any queries or questions from members regarding the substantive printed items and the addendum? I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to make the working assumption that that is agreed, will be incorporated and engrossed into the constitution of the authority from today's date. Thank you for your help and support on this rear instance as well. Okay, so we move on to 6, which is the donation of 2 Scania B type appliances. There are 2 declarations of interest on this. I think this item is probably in the hands of our chief. Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, members, you know, this is probably familiar territory for us to a degree, but you know, the purpose of the report is to request that members approve the donation of the fire appliances identified within the report, and the recommendation that they approve the donation of 1 Scania B type appliance through Ops Sabre and 1 Scania type B appliance to the St John's Corps at Malta. And it is familiar ground because we have done this before particularly in relation to St John's, who are a volunteer arm, and self-evidently they rely on donations such as this to ensure that they have got a fleet of fully functioning appliances. The appliances that we are talking about are both 2002 plates, so they are 18 years of age now, and as a result of that, they are no longer utilised or required by Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. We did keep them on for an extended period, and that was on the basis of potential implications from Brexit. But as we've now moved through that period, and they've, and with that they've aged further, we are now comfortable that we can release these two appliances in the way that is described and on the legal assurances which are contained within paragraph 10 to 12. And again, there is some value associated with it through scrap, but we've considered this in the past, and we feel that there's more value that we would utilise these appliances actively in communities which are arguably more vulnerable than necessarily would be under ordinary circumstances. So obviously Malta, it goes to the Maltese, St John's Core, and in relation to Opsaber, the actual appliance would be delivered to Romania, and it's actually focused in on the Transylvania area where some of the villages in those particular proximities don't have any fire appliances available to them at all. So we have had staff in the past who have either taken the appliance over or taken and supported the transportation of additional equipment across to those locations, and that's been part and parcel of their own commitment. So it's on a voluntary basis, but they've benefited from that experience. And we've got a number of staff in Merseyside who continue to have that relationship alongside Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service with colleagues out in Romania, and have equally benefited from that from a personal development perspective. So the report itself just asks members to confirm that they are content to approve the donation of the Scania appliances on the basis of what is contained within the report and the legal requirements which are mentioned in the paragraphs as previously suggested. So Chair, I'll probably pause at that point and open it to any questions if there are any.
Thank you. These are clearly redundant vehicles which are secure disposal items. We've also got to bear in mind that very shortly no fire authority will be able to run diesel appliances. It'll be, God almighty, hydrogen, helicopters, I don't know, hover fire engines. I've no idea. But these are old and we need to refresh. But they will be put to very good use by these two organisations. And I think the suggestion is that we have a little presentation in due course on how that they are being used, and it's just a goodwill. It's a great thing and a goodwill issue. So I'll throw it open if any members have any queries or questions. We will bring a presentation back on this as we've done before. We'll do it again. If there are any hands going up, if not, I'll make the assumption that this item is agreed. Yeah. Noted and agreed. Yeah, Chair.
Maloney has raised their hand, Chair.
All right, I can't see that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I welcome this. I remember being down at the Training and Development Centre, I think with yourself, Chair, and St John's from Malta were actually using our facility down there at Croxton, so I fully support it. They use our facilities, we help them.
Thank you. Yeah, that's we do. We have a mutual aid arrangement with the Fire and Rescue Corps in Malta. It's a bit of a one-off thing that Malta have, but it's always good to support what is entirely a charity, and they are really, really enthusiastic as well. And they put themselves at risk. They don't need to. They put themselves at risk to rescue people, and that's a great thing. Okay, so thank you for that, Councillor Maloney. We move on to, if that's agreed, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 7, pages 37 to 56, fire protection government grant funding. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. Again, the purpose of the report is to inform the Fire Authority on the grant funding received from government to drive improvements across the authority's protection function. And it's not just Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. I hasten to add this is in relation to protection activity in the broader sense, so part and parcel of £7 million, which is redistributed across fire and rescue services, of which Merseyside, based on the risk that we are exposed to, secured in the region of 718,000, but that was in 3 component parts. The component parts relating to funding which was received for the Building Risk Review Programme, which totalled £135,323. Protection Uplift Programme, which was contained £388,874, which is around improving the local protection capabilities. And then an infrastructure report, which was an infrastructure fund, which was to enable the implementation of the Grenfell Tower recommendations, which equated to £193,928. And then the report goes on within the recommendations, which I will come back to shortly, to detail how we envisage utilising that money. But what I would point out is it's a direct reflection of the Grenfell Tower fire and a real focus now from government in regards to protection and the responsibilities that lie with the authority, notwithstanding some of the changes that might be put in place in 2022 with the introduction of the building safety regulator, a role for the health and safety executive. So the funding that we have secured is a 1-year funding arrangement. We have had extensive conversations with the Minister around extending that and it being part of the baseline funding for fire and rescue service into the future and incorporated into the comprehensive spending review, but that will subject to ongoing discussion, so that is not guaranteed at this moment in time. So the arrangements that we put in place or seek to put in place through the recommendations reflect the temporary nature of that arrangement. And so the recommendations are under the Building Risk Review, the proposal to establish on a temporary basis the team consisting of a station manager, a lead inspector, a coordinating inspector and an administrative support to deliver the programme up until and by 2021 in December. The Protection Uplift Programme, which is a proposal to recruit 6 temporary full-time fire safety inspectors and a fire engineer to increase the resilience of the service and support future succession planning. We are recruiting individuals into the workforce on the basis of the funding. We do know that the projected retirement rates of some of our officers who are currently enrolled would be subsumed, and we would be able to maintain the numbers that we are looking to recruit in. And in addition to the initial recruitment costs, the fire safety inspectors will be required to maintain those competencies against the requisite levels of competency around fire safety inspector. And then the infrastructure report is directly to support the development of our infrastructure, ICT hardware, and address the aspects of the Grenfell Tower inquiry, which self-evidently there's a whole multitude. There's 46 recommendations contained within, and we will utilise that funding to address them. And what I would suggest, Chair, for members, it would probably be quite useful for members to have sight of the work that we are doing in response to the Grenfell Tower fire. And as a result of that, I would suggest we may bring that back to a learning lunch where we can walk members through the 46 recommendations and the actions that Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service and the work that's happening nationally can be shared with members, so they are assured that we are making progress against the said recommendations, which is a real primary concern for the Fire and Rescue Service as it currently stands. I'll probably pause at that point, Chair, and open it up to any questions that members may have.
Yes, thank you, Chief. In terms of learning lunch and presentations, this is a good subject. The scrutiny committee did look at some of the safety issues, particularly looked, I think, at the issues of stay put, and there are quite a lot of findings. There are issues relating to combustible cladding and what I've called the locked-in equity syndrome of high-rises. We haven't got that many in Merseyside, but there's a lot of issues. Also, for members, of course, I've circulated a consultation paper on the proposed code of ethics within the fire service. I know AREA and the other Merseyside solicitors were looking at, properly looking at a wider range of coordination between the Merseyside authorities, and this has been taken out of our hands slightly by the suggestion of having one specifically for the fire service, because the police have got one. The inspector think we should have one. Fine, okay, the negotiation gone. All I'm coming back to saying is, just at the moment, and with the interim findings from both the Grenfell inquiry phase 1 and the interim findings from the Manchester inquiry, there's probably quite a lot of briefing stuff that would, so maybe into the autumn we could have maybe a bit of a couple of hours as a general briefing online, of course, about a number of these things which are ongoing. Probably, and I'm guessing, that we could hang around once we get the results from the inspectorate inquiry into the COVID-19 inspection. And so there's quite a number of things. I'm just suggesting that we have an authority briefing day online for members, running between now and Christmas when we get some of the stuff to deal with.
Yeah, look, Chair, more than happy to do that based on a couple of inquiries and, as you say, the outcomes of the COVID-19 inspection from Her Majesty's Inspectorate. So, so we'll cover off the Grenfell Tower recommendations, we'll cover off any issues in relation to the Manchester Arena bombing inquiry, and then we'll cover off the as you say, the findings from the COVID-19 inspection. So we're more than happy to do that over that period.
And there may be some stuff coming from the bonfire period that we need to just look at after the event, and there's quite a lot of stuff. What I'm saying is let's try and factor in, we're not doing site visits, so let's try and factor in an authority team up, Zoom in, whatever, for members to brief on some of the highline issues of the day. Okay, so coming back to this one, it's specifically about the funding for fire protection, high-rise issues. We've been allocated some money. One of the lobbying points is we are going to be taking on staff. We can't take staff on to pay their wages from capital. It has to be revenue. And they've got to give us and agree, and I think they have, but it just remains to be seen. They've got to give us a continuity of that income so that we can't, it's just not fair. Made this point, we've lobbied on that. I've spoken to the top officials about it. You can't take staff on fairly on on full-time onto our payroll and then only have the money for a year or two. And they know that, and we're lobbying on that. And again, we're in the lead on this. We're showing the rest of the country what to do. We have to recruit and engage some good people, which we will, and have them properly supported and funded. Right. It's more for note. I don't think there's much to agree there, but if I say, if that item 7 is noted and agreed by members, are there any questions? I don't see any. I'm not seeing any raised hands here anyway. We move on to item 8. I've declared an interest non-pecuniary. Chief.
Thanks, Chair. Again, this is a relatively straightforward report, and it relates to the work that we've been doing with the Employers Recognition Scheme. And as members will know, we received a silver award in regards to the work we do with our military colleagues around the recruitment and of staff into the service, but also releasing some of our staff as reservists to support activities locally and overseas. And so what the report goes on to detail, it's to update members as to the success of the authority's policy supporting members of staff who wish to be part of the reserved army forces, and consideration of expanding the opportunities in relation to the numbers of those available opportunities for them. And the recommendation is that members approve an additional 10 grey book positions, so 20 in total, and a further 3 green book positions, to increasing it to 5 in total, and staff are allowed to register as reservists. What I would say is that is the opportunities that are available to staff, and certainly in the kind of conversations we've had, particularly over the COVID period, the relationship is very mature, and if the Fire and Rescue Service requires individuals to be in the workplace, i.e. to be riding fire engines during a pandemic, then they wouldn't be utilised by the military in that way. And as a result of that, it wouldn't be drawn away from us to provide resilience elsewhere. They would be, earmarked and ring-fenced for the activities that they would be undertaking on behalf of the authority, and that is where that maturity of that relationship has developed. and we wouldn't be bringing this forward if we didn't think we were in a position to be able to honour it. And equally, it probably reflects the fact that from a fire and rescue service point of view, we are significantly more resilient than probably we were previously, based on the way that we have recruited more latterly. So we're confident that we can open up these further opportunities, recognising the individual development benefits that the fire and rescue service would receive as a result of releasing individuals. They get enhanced skills, capabilities, which they bring back into the workplace, and we utilise and deploy them accordingly. So again, Chair, the recommendation is that members approve the creation of an additional 10 grey book posts and 3 green book posts in relation to being able to take on reservist duties. Happy to take any questions in relation to the report.
Okay, well, thank you. And I think we as an organisation gain a lot of portable skills from those of our colleagues who are also engaged with the various reserve forces. They bring some of those skills, knowledge and experience into the service. And what used to be about in the 60s, wartime mobilisation, it's not there anymore. So there's no particular structural problem for us. This is welcomed, yes. And so I will move that, and it's a proposition to make a change to our service instructions. I'm not seeing any questions on this, so I'm going to move that it's that it's an accepted and agreed item. 9, Agile working policy, again in your hands, Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, before I go into the purpose of the report and the recommendation, what I would point out is a distinction between an agile working policy and a home working policy and a flexible working policy, and I'll come back and maybe speak in a little bit more detail around the other two. But the agile working policy that we're looking to introduce is a direct reflection of the feedback that we've had of staff over the period, but particularly related to the COVID-19 period during the pandemic. So we've been, the introduction of additional ICT gives us an ability for individuals to work more agilely than previously. Previously they've been restricted to coming into working from a desk, given the fact that that was where their computer was located. On the basis of some of the funding that we've received from government, we are now able to work a little bit more agilely than we previously had. And the benefits of working agilely are contained within paragraphs 7 and 8 of the report, not only for the individual, but also for the authority in relation to efficiency and effectiveness. So it's not singularly about the benefits to individuals. This is about efficiency and effectiveness driving the decisions that the authority make. And so an example of someone working more agilely would be they might have a report to write and they would like to get to a little bit of a quiet place where they can have some time to construct that report independently, and that may require them to work maybe a day from a fire station or a day from home or a couple of hours, and it gives the manager and that individual the opportunity to be able to do that. But as I say, it's not a contractual change around home working, which would have health and safety implications for the individual and the authority. That will come as a different report at a different point in time. And it's equally not a flexible working policy, because the agile working policy probably applies more often than not to staff who are in non-operational roles, where the flexible working policy applies to all staff. So staff who maybe have childcare issues, for instance, or be caring for an elderly parent, might want to secure a flexible working arrangement which would be facilitated through the authority. Those arrangements have been long-standing and remain in place. This is very much about taking the learning from COVID and ensuring that we are able to be as efficient and as effective as we possibly can be whilst managing through a pandemic, but also securing some benefits for the individuals who work within Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. And as a result of that, then that secures us very positively, and equally it helps us and allows us to retain staff a little bit more than arguably we would do ordinarily. So the purpose of the report is to advise members on the learning, particularly during the pandemic, and the introduction of the Agile working policy. And the recommendation is that elected members note the content of the report and approve the adoption of the Agile working policy and supporting guidance note. Chair, once again, I'm happy to take any questions in that regard.
Thank you. I mean, I think this is just part of our structural review, isn't it, of the way that we operate. We have become, not just us, but many people have become geographically focused, whereas we should be focused on outputs, you know, the service that we are providing, not necessarily where we provide it from. Now, I have actually seen a hand up from Councillor Rennie.
But thanks, Chair. Yeah, I fully obviously support the Agile working policy, but just a question really. I mean, obviously, you know, a lot of us are doing all our work from home, but for some people, you know, I have colleagues who said it can be very isolating really, although, you know, there are, you know, the benefits tend to outweigh any of that. And just wondering what we're doing as far as supporting our staff members who might feel that they're isolated, missing some of the camaraderie, and before they get to a crisis. So I do apologise.
There's your friends on to you.
Yes, I do apologise. You know, just basically, you know, how are we anticipating and asking people to speak up if they do have a problem? Thank you. Apologies for the landline going off.
No problem, Councillor Rennie. You know, I suppose the upshot of that is just communicating effectively. So obviously line managers will keep in contact with their staff, irrespective of whether they are working from home or working agilely, based on that just being the kind of way that we are constructing our work moving forward. And we've created, you know, part and parcel of what has been a little bit of a hokey cokey, because we've been in work, then we've gone back to working from home, then we returned to work on the basis of COVID security of our premises, and now we've pushed a number of staff back home again based on the government guidance. So we know that, you know, for some staff it really works. For other staff who have been keen to express a view that they would prefer to be in the workplace. So as part and parcel of the decisions that we've made decisions which reflect the individual's circumstances. We've also sought to operate within bubbles, really, about bringing staff and keeping staff in maybe work, but in limited hours and so on and so forth. So maybe work a couple of days from the office and maybe 3 days from home and vice versa, and rotate them through some staff. So at any point in time, we have got skeleton staff in place in the organisation, so we continue to function effectively in the workplace, notwithstanding the fact that our staff who are at home based on the kind of pandemic are still working really effectively in their role, given what we've previously said about the provision of ICT and technological advancements that were being made by the authority. So we are very, very, very conscious, and I'm particularly conscious around the well-being of staff, and staff knowing that if they choose to come back into the workplace, that will be accommodated. They know that our workplace is COVID secure, so there's really no reasons why they wouldn't return to the workplace, other than the fact that government guidance has suggested we would limit those number of movements if possible, and as a result of that, we've sought to do that. So we continue to communicate. We've got really, really substantive and effective occupational health provisions for those staff who may be finding it a little difficult, dependent on the circumstances. And if an individual is feeling really isolated and felt it would be more beneficial for them to be in the workplace, then we will bring them back into the workplace. That is an absolute given. We've done a little bit of work, for members' interest, we've done a little bit of work based on shielding. Again, not necessarily prescriptive from government now, but we've gone back to all of our shielded employees and asked them what their preference would be based on the circumstances now and the guidance. And a fair number of those individuals, funnily enough, have suggested that they do not want to self-isolate, they do not want to be shielded, they want to return to the workplace, and they want to be kind of active in that workplace. Of course, there are safeguards for them around COVID security, around the arrangements that we put in place, but it's interesting to know that individuals who had been previously required to isolate and isolate for a protracted period of time are very, very keen not to go through that again. So it just reflects the kind of the real kind of consciousness of the authority on the basis that individuals, you know, mental well-being is really important to us during this period.
I did see Councillor Spurrell's hand go up. I think hand went down. If there's anything...
Councillor Rennie asked the question I was going to
ask. Right. You may recall, thank you, Ali. You may recall I'd hoped that we've been able to, because I think that the point that Leslie raises is very important. You know, people are used to seeing their friends, you know, knowing about what's happening. There's that informal level. I'd hoped that on last month, the 17th, we would have had a blended, some meetings, some remote on the strategy day, but we were overtaken by events. And just at the moment, we are trying to maintain safe systems of working, slightly different to what the objective behind Agile working is. Agile working is something a bit different, but it's for the long haul, it's for the future. And we've got to get the equipment right, get our locations right, get our technology and our working and our training, and we don't have to be, we work slightly differently to say local government or some commercial organisations. We do have to have a footprint in the community for which we send our fast reaction out to, but we can deliver and we can actually reduce our property portfolio. We can reduce the size of our buildings and our reliance upon buildings. So anyway, this is not a new agenda. This is we have to take our staff, our great staff, along with us, and the representative bodies will be involved as required, of course. Are there any other points or questions? Anyone else I've not seen raise their hand? If not, can we agree the Agile working policy as outlined by the Chief? Thank you. We move on to item 10, COVID-19. And Merseyside fire update. Again, Chief.
Thanks, Chair. Probably lose me light to COVID-19 updates earlier to some degree. I suppose the purpose of the report is to inform members of the activity that has taken place in the Finance Authority since the last COVID update, which was convened on the 20th of May 2020, and that the purpose of the report is that members note the content of this report. And again, there is a vast array of information contained within the report itself, which details how we have sought to ensure that we are able to continue to respond effectively against our statutory duties, and how we've maintained our workforce resilience during the period, and the decisions that we've made. More recently, we've seen the utilisation of face masks onto fire appliances, and that is about preventing the transmission of the virus, but also protecting the integrity of the team. We've also continued to do work nationally and through Nick Dale in regards to Merseyside footprint, about the kind of contributing to the broader response that has continued to be the same. From a protection point of view, we've continued to focus on... Can everyone still hear me?
Yeah, it's going a bit wobbly, but I can still hear you. Frozen.
You might have lost some.
Oh, gone invisible now. Gemma. Oh, yeah, we're back. Is it just a sound problem, or try saying something?
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, that's right. It's better now.
Okay, it's a bit crackly, but apologies. I don't know where we got up to there in regards to that particular update, but if I return back to agenda item 10, Chair, would that be okay?
Yeah, we're on 10, yes, please.
Okay, so I'm very conscious now of the network. So in relation to agenda item 10, the purpose of the report is to inform members of the activity which has taken place in Merseyside Finance Authority since the last update in May 2020, and that members note the content of the report. The report then goes on to detail the vast array of work we have done, not only from a national perspective, from a Merseyside perspective, and from a local perspective in regards to the business continuity arrangements that have been put in place. So with that in mind, Chair, and the fact that we've got an intermittent issue with regards to the technology, I'll probably pause at that point and open it up to questions.
Okay, so this is, as you said, a moving situation. It's the snapshot. I think probably the next thing on the horizon, obviously we've got the tier 3 issues, whatever help or support we might be asked to give to the combined authority. you know, whatever happens in other authorities around the country. I think for us, the next pinch point is Halloween and the bonfire period, and whatever support we're able to give over that and through that, whatever we're asked to do. What I'm coming to is, we've said that we're going to have a more general briefing for members, you know, maybe once the C19 review is available from the inspectorate, and so we can pick up the Merseyside specific update as, you know, as things are moving on later down the line. If anyone has any specific questions, I'm not seeing any hands.
Councillor Makinson.
Oh, sorry, yes. Well, okay, Councillor Makinson. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, some excellent work from our firefighters as ever, and I know my constituents have fed back some quite positive comments about the support they've received. A few weeks ago, I raised the issue of testing for our firefighters, who are obviously putting themselves in the front line at risk. And we were told there was some lobbying going on to ensure that there was a greater priority for testing for firefighters and the other blue light services. Has anything actually come from that?
We've got access now to testing centres for our, you know, Merseyside firefighters, and I'll talk about nationally in a second. Is, you know, we're getting access to very readily, so there is no problems. And we have still raised that issue with the Home Office nationally, and that's more about recognising that not only ourselves, firefighters, emergency services should be prioritised in regard to accessing likes of testing, but also it would extend to the flu jab, and that is still being dealt with by the Home Office. But actually, in my discussions with chiefs from up and down the country, fire and rescue services are getting access to the testing requirements that they need to fulfil their duties to get their firefighters back into the workplace as expediently as possible. So we're not experiencing any problems, but we still feel it's important that, you know, fire and rescue services, emergency services are part of the prioritisation scheme for any future issues that we may have yet to address.
Thank you.
It's very important, you know, and all we can, you know, is say it's a moving situation at the moment.
Yeah,
okay.
just to put that into context, really, given the fact that the issues seem to have resolved a little bit now. You know, we've been doing an incredible amount of work, both nationally, locally, and around the business continuity arrangements. And we know Merseyside, particularly the city region, being in tier 3 now, is, you know, as a direct result of the high levels of transmission which are affecting our communities. And, you know, and as Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority, you know, we have the chair and myself have made it clear that we will support the response to the pandemic in any way, shape or form we can. You know, we know that at this moment in time, you know, 90%, 95% of our intensive care beds are being utilised. We also know that, you know, the transmission levels are extremely high, and our rates are probably 2, 3, even 4 times more than they are in other parts of the country. And, you know, when we are committed to assisting and supporting that. Some of the discussions we've been having nationally around tripartite agreements and ways of working with the trade unions, it's highly likely that there will be, you know, more activities included within those kind of working practices in the foreseeable future, and that will directly reflect the fact that actually there's probably more things that the fire and rescue service can do to support the communication and limit the transmission of the virus, and we stand ready, willing and able to do that.
Yes, thank you. I know, just as members know, both the Chief and I have been in touch with Steve Rotherham to offer what we can. We don't know what we can, you know, but we're willing. And we'll be very happy to enter into a dialogue with the combined authority. And also, we've already had agreed to undertake a programme of online meetings or speaking to the district leaders and the MPs, the community leaders. We've been overtaken by events a little bit. Everybody's up to their eyeballs with what's going on. But it's very important that we give community leadership and we continue to do what we do well, which is trying to keep our community safe. Is there any other questions or points to the Chief in this one? Okay, so we move on to, that was for noting really. So the next one is item 11, TDA Development. Chief?
Thanks, Chair. I'm having some technical difficulties, so I can see you, Chair, but I can't see anybody else at this moment in time. So I will talk to the report, but please feel free to chip in and make comments if needs be, because I can't see whether people's hands are being raised.
Okay. Yeah.
So the purpose of this report is to seek members' indicative support for the development of a training development academy and a fire station on a new site rather than develop the existing site. And members will recall that the possibility of building a new training facility was discussed as part and parcel of our strategy day and would form part of our 2021-2024 integrated risk management planning cycle. And that any subsequent proposal will be subject to members receiving a full and detailed proposal, including a full business case and a funding statement before any final commitment to a new site was agreed. And then the recommendation itself, in recognition of the fact that we have sought to kind of explore those opportunities, the recommendations are that members approve the deferral of the refurbishment of the current TDA site and instruct the Chief Officer to look at for a new site from which we could run a training development academy. And that's on the basis that actually our current site, whilst being probably around 5.2 acres, it is landlocked. We have a school on one side and we have a cemetery at the rear and adjacent to our current site, which restricts any further development. Equally, the site is becoming a little tired and the facilities don't reflect to the full extent the foreseeable risk across Merseyside. Recommendation B, it goes on to say, instruct the Chief Officer to report back to members with proposals for a new site, including the business case and funding proposal. And again, the Treasurer is on the call. Clearly, we would need to be able to find the funding to be able to support the proposal in the first instance, and that would form part of the deliberations by the members of the authority in relation to final approval and sign-off of the plan. And rest assured, and I've said this on a number of occasions, the proposals that we would put before the members wouldn't result in a reduction of fire engines or firefighters in that regard. So that would be actually one of the principles that we would adopt in the potential move to a new site. Recommendation C is to approve the use of capital reserve to fund any pump priming work ahead of the detailed proposal. And that's just to ensure the fact that we can deliver what we said we were going to deliver and there isn't going to be any unforeseen issues affecting the potential build. And then delegate powers to the Chief Officer to make conditional bids for potential sites. If deadlines for bids means that it's not possible to get members' formal approval beforehand. But note that any conditions associated with the bid will be full authority approval before any bid is successful. And then note that the conditional bid, non-binding, has been made in conjunction with the Chair on a preferred new site, as the deadline for bids was the 25th of September and a number of competitive bids have been received in relation to the site. So just to reinforce the point, we have made a non-binding conditional bid on a plot of land which we think is viable for us from which to operate a new training development academy. But that would be subject to a number of things. Again, get access to the site in the first instance and the bid being successful or being accepted. The funding being available to develop the site and sustain the site, public consultation and authority approval based on the business cases that would be moved forward. And so that it is absolutely non-binding. It is a conditional bid, but we've had to move quickly on the basis that there were competitive bids on the land that we had identified. And recommendation F, to request a more detailed report subject to the outcome of the comprehensive spending review and following the response from the conditional bid, which would ultimately indicate the feasibility of the proposal. Recommendation G, note that any progress would be subject to public consultation and authority approval as previously stated. And recommendation H, we note that any proposal will be captured within the 2021-2024 integrated risk management plan. The report then goes on to provide the details and the background in relation to why we are proposing moving to an alternate site, but it also recognises the fact that we'd already allocated 6.6 million for the redevelopment of the current training development academy. And probably the best way to describe that would be, that investment would be welcomed, and it would certainly develop the site beyond its current capabilities. But in effect, it was highly likely that some years from now, in the not too distant future, we'd be reinvesting back into the same site rather than establishing a new footprint with all the capabilities that we require to meet foreseeable risk. I haven't gone into the specifics of the locations of the site as yet, given the fact that it's, there is some commercial confidentiality required, and we are still in a position of negotiating with regards to the proposal and the offer that's been put forward on behalf of the authority. But again, just to reinforce the point, Chair, this is a conditional bid and it's non-binding of the authority, and it is subject to the points that are previously stated. So again, I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, in relation to anything that's been stated.
Thank you. Yes, it's just part of the development. We'd agreed this strategy, and it's just finding a site. Commercial confidentiality applies. Councillor Sporrell, I think you've raised your hand.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify in terms of if we do go ahead and build a new one, obviously it pushes the kind of progress of the new facilities back, so all of this can be sorted out. What impact is that going to have in terms of the current site? And are there any kind of urgent repairs that are going to be needed, and the cost of that, as well as the experience of the staff who are currently working there? You know what I mean? Is all of that taken into account in terms of pushing, while it would be better in the long run, there's obviously short-term consequences of that?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Sporrell. In relation to our staff, without going into great detail, the location that we are looking at is within distance for them, so we shouldn't have an adverse impact on the individuals working there currently in regards to them being able to continue to work from an alternative venue. Equally, we've embarked on a significant amount of recruitment more latterly, and actually what we are proposing would be more beneficial from that perspective, because it allows us to continue to utilise the current site to recruit in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service while redevelop an alternative site. The alternative to that would redevelop this current site, and that would have an impact on our ability to continue to recruit. So we would have to stop recruiting whilst we were redeveloping the site, because the site wouldn't be suitable for us to continue to train. So what is proposed is actually more beneficial, because it will allow us to continue to train effectively against core risk and foreseeable risk. It will allow us to continue our recruitment while we are in the process of securing the land, building an alternative training facility, at which point we would flip across from one to the other, and then we would sell the site and utilise that to fund the future and further development of the proposed or the potential site that we are now identifying.
So there's no kind of immediate need in terms of repairs or upgrades that need to happen to the current site. It can operate as it is for now, acknowledging it's not where you want to be, but there's nothing urgent that's going to need a lot of money spent on it. And then you also build a new site, is what I'm trying to understand in terms of any urgent repairs, for example.
Yeah, the minimal. There will be some costs associated with just kind of keeping on top of things, because we're probably talking about potentially maybe a couple of years if we are talking about the extent of the development we would want to secure, the planning permission, the public consultation, the authority approval. Yeah. And so there will be some costs, but they will be absorbed. They won't be significant, and certainly they won't be excessive, and it won't really eat into that money that's already been allocated for the redevelopment of the site. That would just be ongoing costs that we would have incurred anyway.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other members? I mean, what we're trying to capture, what the Chief's trying to capture here is the process of making a bid. We don't know whether we'll be successful. It's only a provisional, sort of conditional bid at this stage. If the bid is successful and we settle on a site in agreement with the site owner, then the next thing to do is to bring a comprehensive report to the authority, properly brief on it, and then prepare the logistics and all of the choreography that goes with a major reinvestment of what is a tired site at this time. It's great for us, but it is a long and narrow, tired site. And having something super duper would be in the safety interests of our staff and the public.
Yeah.
So at this point, what the Chief is doing is to capture the action that was taken between the Chief and Chair to make a provisional offer, a contingent offer, we will report back on what happens. No, any questions or points on that?
Councillor Kenny.
Councillor?
Councillor Kenny has raised his hand.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah,
Councillor Kenny?
yeah, thanks, Chair. All I wanted to say is I've got no problem at all with the recommendation on the basis that, as I see it, all we're being asked to agree at this stage is to give agreements in principle. So there's no commitments, financial or otherwise, on the basis that we will get all the details later on. And that is when we can obviously look at the cost, the exact site, etc., and take into account all the details. So as far as I'm concerned, I've got no problem with the recommendation because it's just agreements in principle. So I'm happy to support it on that basis.
We've already agreed the idea of refreshing the training centre. It's just, as always now, site assembly, and we're just having to go through the normal process of bids, trying, will it work, won't it work, it's the usual stuff, commercial confidentiality, trying to negotiate. So it's reporting that we've already agreed the whole idea of refreshing the training and development academy. It's now the usual logistics of making that happen. But thank you for that. Yeah, that's much appreciated. So if there's no other...
Yeah, sorry, Chair, Councillor Maloney's indicated that she would like to speak.
Councillor Maloney?
Thank you, Chair. Phil, at the away day, the strategy day, you did say that you'd spoken to the Home Secretary about the benefits of this being up in the northwest. Have you had any communications back from her yet?
I've got a meeting on Friday with colleagues from the Home Office, and you know, one of the kind of key aspects of that meeting, Linda, is to discuss this and discuss their potential contribution to our new training development site. So we will see how that goes, and again, I'll feed back to members on progress. It's very early stages, but certainly that was what that meeting is about on Friday.
Thank you.
That's very good. Thanks. Good question. Thank you. If we can shake hands with a site owner and start to make some progress, then I think, you know, Home Office and other people may well come on board. Whilst we haven't got anything practical to offer them other than suggestions, you know, they're not going to put figures in the budget. But if we've got real plans and we sort of say, look, you know, why don't you do this? Well, I think the door might be slightly ajar on that. But anyway, you know, good luck with that, Chief. And, you know, let's hope that something comes of that.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? If not, just to say, we did have a station visit staff engagement day in the committee calendar for the 14th of November. I'm not saying that we would utilise that for a briefing day, but it's a possible handle. We just wait and see what happens with regard to the Inspectorate's report on COVID-19. But otherwise, the next Policy and Resources meeting is on the 12th of December, with a learning lunch beforehand. We can look at what issues we're going to have for that. It may well be that that would be something along the lines of, you know, building safety and the new safety legislation. We could look at that.
Sorry,
But with that,
Chair, could I just ask to confirm that agenda item 11 was therefore agreed by members?
yes, okay, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I thought we had agreed that. Yeah, so I'm making the proposition that item 11 is agreed and noted. If there's any other comments.
The Policy and Resources Committee is on the 10th of December, not the 12th, just to clarify.
Right. Okay, so I'm just looking at my little slip, although the computer doesn't like to look at it, it's pixelating it out. And okay, yes, well, we'll send a note out, but the next opportunity is Policy and Resources with a learning lunch beforehand. And at that point, with Merseyside, the only part of the country in Tier 3, I hope that we and our officers can stay safe. members can work in their own authorities. We've thrown out offer to be of assistance within the county as required. Thank you to all our great people for all the work that's being done, keeping the whole of Merseyside safe. Well done to the St Helens fire station, which is going shift 1 from Friday, and we'll pick up a visit there in due course. I'm sure it's going to become a fantastic facility to keep that part of the whole of Merseyside, but that part safe. And at that point, I'll say thank you very much, members.